Lieutenant Gregory Powell stood at the viewport of the USS Horizon, watching as the alien planet grew larger. Zelaria was beautiful from space, swirling blues and purples with streaks of golden clouds. His hands fidgeted with the collar of his dress uniform. After 2 years of message exchanges, humans were finally meeting the Zellarians face to face. Greg sighed, his thoughts drifting to the photo tucked in his pocket. His wife Ellie, gone 3 years now. Cancer. Sometimes he wondered why he stayed in the service after losing her. Maybe the emptiness of space matched the emptiness he felt inside. Nervous, Lieutenant? Captain Diane Russell appeared beside him, her gray eyes scanning the approaching planet. Just ready to get down there, ma'am, Greg replied. Remember, you're our engineer, not a diplomat. Let the ambassadors do the talking. She patted his shoulder. Your job is to observe their technology and nothing more. The landing shuttle vibrated as it entered Zellaria's atmosphere. Greg sat with 5 other crew members and 2 human ambassadors. Dr. Alan Cortez, the ship's xenobiologist, couldn't stop smiling. Their biology is fascinating, Alan whispered to Greg. Insectoid features, but with nearly human intelligence patterns. And their exoskeletons like living jewels. The shuttle landed with a soft thud. When the door opened, Greg's translator earpiece immediately began picking up clicks and whistles, converting them to English. The Zellarians waited in neat rows, their bodies gleaming with iridescent colors that shifted in the sunlight. Greg tried not to stare. The aliens stood on 4 lower limbs, while their upper 2 limbs gestured as they spoke. Their oval heads featured compound eyes that reflected rainbow patterns. Each Zellarian's exoskeleton shimmered with a unique pattern of colors, some blue-green, others purple-gold. Ambassador Joan Kim stepped forward first, making the greeting gestures they had practiced. The Zellarian leader, distinguished by an elaborate headdress, responded with similar movements. The diplomatic party was led to a massive crystal structure. Inside, hundreds of Zellarians gathered for the welcome ceremony. Greg followed the procession, taking notes on his tablet about the technology he observed. The building was temperature-controlled, using some kind of liquid cooling system he'd never seen before. During the reception, Greg wandered away from the main group, fascinated by a wall of flowing light patterns. His engineer's mind wanted to understand how it worked. A sudden commotion caught his attention. Near a side entrance, a smaller Zellarian was surrounded by 4 larger ones. In her upper limbs, she clutched something that squirmed and made high-pitched sounds. Greg's translator picked up fragments. ... defective offspring. ... disgrace to the hive. ... disposal. Protocol. ... doth es medis destitat ... disgrace to the hive. ... des. The smaller Zellarian, clearly female from her markings, was making desperate sounds. The translator struggled, but conveyed. Enough. She was begging them not to take her baby. Greg moved closer, pretending to study a nearby control panel. Now he could see what the commotion was about. The infant Zellarian looked similar to the adults, but lacked something crucial. Its exoskeleton was almost transparent, with none of the vibrant colors that adorned the others. Where the other Zellarians gleamed like jewels, this baby was pale and translucent. One of the officials reached for the infant. The law is clear. Defective offspring cannot remain. It brings weakness to all Zellaria. The mother's colors dulled to a gray-blue as she clutched her baby tighter. Please ... Just one more day. The human delegation's arrival cannot delay our protocols, the official stated. The disposal will proceed now. Greg's stomach turned cold. Disposal? They couldn't mean ... before he could think better of it. Greg stepped forward. Excuse me. All 5 Zilarians turned their compound eyes toward him. The official's colors shifted to deep red. Human engineer, one said, this is not your concern. Return to your delegation. Greg swallowed hard, but stood his ground. What exactly is wrong with the child? The lead official's antennae twitched. In what Greg assumed was annoyance. It lacks proper coloration. The transparency of its shell indicates genetic inferiority. It will never contribute to society. You're going to kill a baby because it's not colorful enough? Greg couldn't keep the horror from his voice. Not kill. Dispose. It is mercy, the official explained as if to a child. This offspring would face rejection throughout life. Our society is based on beauty and perfection. This one will never be accepted. Greg looked at the infant again. Now that he was closer, he could see that the baby's transparent shell wasn't empty. Beneath it, patterns of light seemed to pulse and shift, subtle but present, like distant stars. Where I come from, Greg said carefully, we don't throw away lives because they look different. The mother's colors suddenly brightened with hope. The officials conferred among themselves, their clicking language too fast for the translator to keep up. Finally, the lead official turned back to Greg. You find this defective offspring acceptable? Greg nodded. I think all life deserves a chance. More rapid clicking between the officials. Then, fascinating. Humans are more primitive than we understood. The official made a dismissive gesture. If you value this defective one, then take it. The mother has already shown weakness by bonding with it. She requires reconditioning. What? Greg hadn't expected this turn. You want me to take the baby? If you do not, disposal proceeds as planned. The mother will be reconditioned regardless. Her attachment is inappropriate. Greg looked from the officials to the mother, whose colors now pulsed with a frantic blue pattern. The baby in her arms made soft chirping sounds. Captain Russell would have his head. Interspecies adoption wasn't covered in any protocol he knew, but the alternative. I'll take her, he said, the words coming out before he could second guess. Himself, the lead official made a gesture, and 2 guards moved toward the mother. She resisted for only a moment before surrendering her baby, her colors fading to a dull gray as the infant was passed to Greg. The tiny Zilarian felt surprisingly light in his arms. Up close, he could see that beneath the transparent shell, tiny lights pulsed in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. The baby chirped and reached a small limb toward his face. You understand this creature requires specific nutrition and environment? The official asked. Greg nodded, though he had no idea what he was agreeing to. I'll learn what I need to know. As the mother was led away, she called out something the translator couldn't catch. One of the lesser officials reluctantly explained, she says her name is Lyra. It is meaningless. Name it as you wish. Greg looked down at the infant in his arms. Lyra, he repeated softly. Her name is Lyra. As he turned to walk back to the human delegation, knowing he'd have a world of explaining to do, the baby Zilarian's transparent shell suddenly filled with a soft blue glow, pulsing gently against his chest. Greg didn't know the first thing about raising a human baby, let alone alien one. But as little Lyra chirped and her shell glowed brighter, one thing became clear. Sometimes family finds you in the most unexpected places. The walk back to the human delegation felt like the longest journey of Greg's life. Lyra chirped softly in his arms, her transparent shell now glowing with a gentle blue light. He tried to appear confident as he approached Captain Russell, whose face transformed from diplomatic politeness to shock when she saw what he was carrying. Lieutenant Powell, she said through a forced smile, a word, please. She led him to a quiet corner of the reception hall, her smile vanishing the moment they were out of sight from the Zilarian officials. What have you done? She hissed. And what is that? "This is Lyra," Greg said, adjusting the small alien in his arms. "She's a Xilarian infant. They were going to kill her because her shell isn't colorful enough." Captain Russell pinched the bridge of her nose. "We are guests here, Lieutenant. We do not interfere with alien cultural practices, no matter how we feel about them. They were going to dispose of her, Captain, right in front of me. And now you've what? Adopted an alien baby? Do you have any idea what you've done to our mission here?" Before Greg could answer, Dr. Alan Cortez appeared beside them, his eyes wide with wonder as he stared at Lyra. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked, moving closer to examine the infant. "A juvenile Xilarian. And look at that shell. I've never seen anything like it. The transparency is remarkable." "That's why they were going to kill her," Greg explained. "Apparently being different is a death sentence here." Captain Russell sighed deeply. "Doctor, please tell me this creature can survive on our ship." Alan hesitated. "I'd need to run tests, study their biology more closely. But yes, I believe." "So, the Xilarians breathe a similar atmosphere to ours, though they prefer higher humidity. Their nutritional needs would be the challenge." "The officials mentioned something about that," Greg said. "I told them I'd learn what I needed to know." "This is a diplomatic nightmare," Captain Russell muttered. She looked at Greg, then at the baby Xilarian, who was now reaching a tiny limb toward her face. For a moment, her expression softened. "We leave in 3 days. You have until then, too. Gather whatever information you need to keep this Lyra alive, and you'd better hope this doesn't destroy relations with the first alien species we've managed to contact." Greg felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Captain." "Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. When we return to the horizon, you'll be fully responsible for her. She stays in your quarters, and this doesn't interfere with your duties. Understood?" "Yes, Mom." "Doctor." Cortez was already tapping notes into his tablet. "I'll start researching their biology immediately. The Xilarians provided basic biological data in our initial exchanges. It's not much, but it's a start." The next 3 days passed in a blur. Greg split his time between his engineering duties and learning everything he could about Xilarian infants. He discovered that they needed a diet rich in minerals, particularly copper and zinc. Their bodies processed nutrients through a complex filtering system, and they absorbed moisture directly through their exoskeletons. The Xilarian officials seemed bemused by his interest, but provided basic care instructions. Greg learned that Xilarian infants molted their shells several times during development, and that they communicated through both sounds and color patterns in their exoskeletons. One official, less hostile than the others, explained that Lyra's transparent shell was considered a severe defect because communication through color was essential to their society. "The offspring cannot hide its emotions," the official explained. "It will always reveal truth. This is dangerous." Greg found this fascinating rather than concerning. "So she's basically more honest than other Xilarians?" The official's colors darkened. "Unfiltered emotion leads to chaos. This is why such offspring are not permitted." Back on the shuttle to the USS Horizon, Greg sat with Lyra secured in a makeshift carrier Dr. Cortez had designed. The baby Xilarian was sleeping, her transparent shell pulsing with soft pink light. "That's interesting," Alan said, pointing to the color. "From what I've observed, pink seems to indicate contentment in their species." "You think she's happy?" Greg asked. "It appears so. Despite being removed from her biological mother, she seems to have bonded with you already." Once aboard the Horizon, Greg faced a new challenge: creating a suitable habitat for Lyra in his quarters. With Alan's help, he converted his small bathroom into a humid environment with the right temperature and light conditions for a Xilarian infant. The ship's fabricator produced a shallow pool where Lyra could absorb the mineral solutions she needed. Word spread quickly through the ship about the alien baby. Some crew members were curious, visiting Greg's quarters to see Lyra. Others kept their distance, uncomfortable with the idea of an insectoid alien living among them. Chief Engineer Pat Mason was one of the skeptics. "You sure about this, Powell? You're not exactly father material. Can barely keep your plants alive." Greg was changing Lyra's mineral bath when Pat came to inspect his work on the habitat. "I'm learning as I go," he admitted. "And what happens? When we get back to Earth, they're not going to let you keep an alien pet." Greg felt a flash of anger. "She's not a pet. She's a child." Pat raised an eyebrow. "A child with 6 limbs and compound eyes. Look, I get that you've been different since Ellie died, but this isn't the way to fill that hole." Greg carefully lifted Lyra from her bath. Her shell glowed bright yellow, a color he hadn't seen before. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just couldn't let them kill her for being different." That night, as the ship hummed quietly around them, Greg sat by Lyra's pool, watching her sleep. Her transparent shell pulsed with gentle colors that shifted like dreams. He had no idea what he was doing or how this would work long term. But when her tiny limb wrapped around his finger, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He started recording a log on his tablet. Day 4 with Lyra. "She's eating well. The mineral solution Dr. Cortez created seems to be working. Her shell changes color with her moods, which makes it easier to understand what she needs. Pink means she's content. Yellow might be curiosity. Blue seems to be her default when she's calm." Greg paused, watching as a new color, a soft lavender, spread through Lyra's shell. "I don't know what purple means yet," he continued, "but I'm going to find out. I'm going to learn everything about her. The Zelarians thought she wasn't worth keeping because she's different. I'm going to prove them wrong." As if in response, Lyra's shell brightened, the lavender glow illuminating Greg's tired face. For the first time since losing Ellie, he smiled a real smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the human engineer and his alien daughter. 6 months passed quickly aboard the USS Horizon. Greg stood at the viewport with Lyra perched on his shoulder, watching as Earth grew larger in the distance. The blue-green planet looked both familiar and strange after so long in space. "That's our home," Greg told Lyra, though he wasn't sure how much she understood. "Well, my home. It's going to be your home, too, now." Lyra's transparent shell rippled with golden light, which Greg had learned meant excitement. She had grown noticeably in the past months, now about the size of a human toddler, though her development was different. She could stand on her 4 lower limbs and use her upper limbs with surprising dexterity. Most remarkably, she had begun to communicate, not just through the colors that flowed across her transparent shell, but with sounds that were becoming more structured. Dr. Cortez believed she was trying to mimic human speech. "Earth," Greg said clearly, pointing to the planet. Lyra's mandibles clicked as she tried to form the word. RDH. Greg smiled, close enough. Captain Russell approached them, her face serious as always, but with a hint of softness when she looked at Lyra. Over the months, even the captain had grown fond of the alien child. "We'll reach your station in 6 hours, Lieutenant. Are you prepared for the debriefing?" Greg nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Dr. Cortez and I have compiled all our observations of Lyra's development." "Good. I've received word that there will be additional parties interested in meeting your daughter." The word still sounded strange coming from the captain. "Government officials, scientists, possibly military." Greg felt a twist of worry. "I'm not letting them take her, Captain." Captain Russell sighed. "No one said anything about taking her, Powell, but you must understand, this is the first alien child to ever live among humans. There will be questions, tests, protocols. Greg knew she was right, but it didn't ease his concern. The USS Horizon had become a safe bubble for him and Lyra. Everything would be different. When they docked at Earth Station, Greg packed their few belongings. Lyra needed special equipment for her mineral baths and humidity control, which Dr. Cortez had helped improve over the months. Greg also had 6 data tablets filled with notes, observations, and video recordings documenting Lyra's growth. Ready to meet some new humans? Greg asked as he helped Lyra into the special environmental suit Alan had designed for her. It maintained the humidity her exoskeleton needed while allowing her to move freely in Earth's drier atmosphere. Lyra's shell pulsed purple, her color for uncertainty. Many humans? She asked in her clicking, still developing speech. Yes, but I'll be with you the whole time. The airlock door opened, and Greg carried Lyra through to the station's arrival area. Immediately, he saw the crowd waiting. There were officers in uniform, scientists in lab coats, and in the back, media with cameras. A stern-looking woman in a dark suit stepped forward. Lieutenant Powell? I'm Director Kelly Weber, Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. We'll need you and a Zellarian specimen to come with us immediately. Greg bristled at the word specimen. Her name is Lyra, and we're not going anywhere until I know exactly what you plan to do. Director Weber's expression didn't change. This is a matter of national security, Lieutenant. The first alien life form to reside on Earth falls under our jurisdiction. She's not under anyone's jurisdiction except mine, Greg said firmly. I'm her legal guardian. According to whom? Zellarian law? They discarded her. Earth has no legal framework for alien adoption. Before Greg could respond, Captain Russell stepped between them. Director Weber, Lieutenant Powell, has been Lyra's primary caregiver for 6 months. Our xenobiologist, Dr. Cortez, has extensive data on her development. I suggest we begin with a full debriefing before making any decisions. The standoff might have continued, but a new voice called out from behind the crowd. Greg, over here. Greg turned to see his sister Olivia, pushing her way through the officials. Her brown hair was shorter than he remembered, but her smile was the same. When she reached him, she threw her arms around both him and Lyra. You're finally home, she said, then pulled back to look at Lyra. Her eyes widened, but to Greg's relief, there was no disgust in her expression, only wonder. So this is her. This is Lyra. Lyra's shell shifted to a curious yellow as she studied Olivia's face. Then, slowly, pink contentment spread through her transparent body. She likes you, Greg told his sister. Olivia smiled. Of course she does. We're family. Director Weber cleared her throat. This is all very touching, but we need to proceed with the examination protocols. My brother and his daughter just returned from space, Olivia said, turning to face the director. They need rest, not interrogation. I'm a lawyer, Director. I'd be happy to discuss the legal standing of alien adoption with you, after they've had a chance to settle in. Greg had never been so grateful for his sister's sharp mind and sharper tone. After some negotiation, it was agreed that Greg and Lyra could stay at Olivia's home, with daily visits from Dr. Cortez and weekly check-ins with the extraterrestrial. Affairs Division. Olivia lived in a small coastal town, far from the bustle of major cities. Her house was modest, but had a large sunroom that Greg immediately began converting into a space for Lyra. You can stay as long as you need, Olivia told him as she helped unpack Lyra's equipment. Though I never imagined my brother would make me an aunt to an alien. Greg watched as Lyra explored the sunroom, her shell changing colors with each new discovery. I never imagined it either. But here we are. That night, after Lyra was asleep in her new habitat, Greg and Olivia sat on the porch overlooking the ocean. The media found out, Olivia said, showing him her tablet. The headline read, Human Officer Adopts Alien Reject. There was a blurry photo of Greg carrying Lyra through the station. Greg's sighed. I was afraid of that. People are curious, Greg. Some are scared. Others are fascinated. You can't blame them. This has never happened before. I just want to give her a normal life. Olivia laughed softly. Nothing about this is normal. But that doesn't mean it can't be good. She looked at her brother carefully. You've changed. Before your mission, after Ellie died, I was worried about you. But now there's purpose in your eyes again. Greg nodded, looking out at the waves. Lyra needed me. Maybe I needed her too. The next morning, as Greg was preparing Lyra's mineral bath, there was a knock at the door. Olivia answered it to find a woman with curly red hair standing on the porch. Hi, I'm Marie Donovan from next door, she said with a warm smile. I teach kindergarten in town. I heard you had a special guest and thought I'd welcome you to the neighborhood. Olivia hesitated, but Marie added, I don't have a camera or a newspaper, just a cake and some friendly curiosity. When Marie met Lyra, she showed none of the fear or disgust that Greg had prepared himself for. Instead, she spoke to Lyra directly, as she would to any child. Hello, Lyra. That's a beautiful name. And what lovely colors you have. Lyra's shell glowed pink with happiness, and Greg felt something warm settle in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a place to belong. Here, after all. 3 years passed in the small coastal town. The house that once belonged only to Olivia now felt like a true home for Greg and Lyra. The sunroom had been expanded into a larger space that mimicked Zellarian climate conditions, though Lyra spent less and less time there. She had adapted well to Earth's environment, needing her special humidity suit only when the weather was particularly dry. Lyra had grown significantly. Her body now resembled that of an 8-year-old human child in size, though her development timeline remained unpredictable. Her 6 limbs had lengthened, and her transparent exoskeleton had become stronger. Most remarkably, her ability to communicate had flourished. Dad, look what I made, Lyra said, her voice still carrying a slight clicking quality, but clearly understandable. She held up a drawing that showed 3 figures, Greg, Marie, and herself, standing on a beach with a purple sky. Greg's smiled as he examined the artwork. That's beautiful, Lyra. Is the sky purple because that's what Zellaria looks like? Lyra's shell rippled with the golden color of excitement. I don't remember Zellaria very well, but sometimes I dream of purple skies. Greg pinned the drawing to the refrigerator alongside dozens of others. Marie, who had become a frequent visitor and close friend, had encouraged Lyra's artistic talents. You're getting better every day, Greg said, gently touching one of Lyra's upper limbs. Maybe we should get you some proper art supplies. Marie already ordered some, Lyra replied. She says they'll arrive next week. Greg felt a warm flutter in his chest. Over the past 3 years, Marie had become more than just their neighbor. Her kindness toward Lyra had turned into genuine affection, and her visits had become longer and more frequent. Lately, those visits often continued after Lyra went to sleep, with Marie and Greg talking late into the night. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. When Greg opened the door, he found Dr. Alan Cortez standing there with his usual friendly smile and a case of equipment. Right on time for our monthly checkup, Greg said, inviting him in. Lyra's in the kitchen. Alan had left the USS Horizon shortly after their return to Earth, accepting a position as the lead xenobiologist for the Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. He had insisted on remaining Lyra's primary doctor, a role Greg was grateful for. Unlike some of the other scientists who had wanted to study Lyra, Alan always treated her as a person first and a fascinating species second. "Good morning, Lyra," Alan said cheerfully as he entered the kitchen. "How are you feeling today?" "Good," Lyra replied, her shell glowing pink with contentment. "I finished all my online lessons for the week." Lyra's education had been a challenge. Traditional schools weren't prepared for a six-limbed alien student, and some parents had expressed concerns about their children attending class with her. As a compromise, Lyra took most of her lessons online, with Marie providing additional tutoring 3 times a week. Alan began his examination, checking Lyra's vital signs with specialized equipment he had developed specifically for her. "Your respiration rate is perfect, and your shell transparency is stable," he noted. "Any new colors we should document?" Lyra concentrated, and her transparent shell began to shift through a range of colors, the familiar pink of contentment, yellow of curiosity, purple of uncertainty, and blue of calmness. Then, with visible effort, she produced a deep orange color they hadn't seen before. "Impressive," Alan said, recording the new color. "What does orange mean to you?" "Determination," Lyra said. "I feel it when I'm trying hard to do something difficult." Greg watched with pride. Lyra's ability to control her colors had improved dramatically. In the beginning, her shell had simply reflected her emotions automatically. Now she could express herself with more nuance. After the examination, Alan asked to speak with Greg privately. They stepped onto the back porch while Lyra returned to her studies. "Everything looks good physically," Alan said. "Her development is remarkable, but there's something you should know." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "A Zilarian diplomatic delegation is coming to Earth next month. They've specifically requested to see Lyra." Greg felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "Why?" "They threw her away. They called her defective." "That's just it," Alan said. "Apparently, more Zilarian children have been born with transparent shells in the past few years. Enough that they can't simply dispose of them all. They want to understand why it's happening. And they think studying Lyra will help them." Alan nodded. "They've received our reports on her development. They're particularly interested in her ability to control her color expressions and her advanced learning capabilities." Greg frowned. "She's not a lab specimen." "No one's suggesting she is," Alan assured him. "But this could be important for her, Greg. A chance to connect with her own species, to learn about her heritage." Greg looked through the window at Lyra, who was focused intently on her tablet screen. "I'll think about it." "But the decision has to be hers." That evening, Marie came over for dinner, as she often did on Fridays. She brought fresh bread from the bakery in town and a small gift for Lyra, a book about Earth's oceans, which had become one of Lyra's favorite subjects. After dinner, when Lyra was engrossed in her new book, Greg told Marie about the Zilarian delegation. "What do you think I should do?" he asked. Marie considered carefully before answering. "I think Lyra deserves to know about her origins, but she also deserves protection from anyone who might see her as less than she is." "I'm afraid they'll want to take her back," Greg admitted, "or that meeting them will make her feel rejected all over again." "Lyra is stronger than you think," Marie said, placing her hand over his, "and she knows who her real family is." Later that night, Greg sat on the edge of Lyra's sleeping pool. Though she could now sleep in a regular bed, she still preferred the comfort of the mineral-enriched water for resting. "Lyra," he said gently, "there's something I need to tell you." Lyra's shell, which had been a calm blue as she dozed, shifted to attentive yellow. "What is it, Dad?" Greg explained about the Zilarian delegation as simply as he could. "They want to meet you because there are other Zilarian children like you now." Lyra sat up, her shell flashing with golden excitement. "Others like me? With transparent shells?" "Yes, and the Zilarians want to understand why." Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her color shifting from excitement to uncertainty and back again. "Will they take me away?" "No," Greg said firmly. "Never. You're my daughter. But if you want to meet them, to learn more about where you came from, that's your choice." Lyra's shell settled into a new color, a deep, steady green that Greg hadn't seen before. "What does green mean?" he asked. "Hope," Lyra said simply. "I want to meet them. Not because I want to go back, but because I want to know. And because maybe the other children like me need help too." Greg felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. The Xelarians had called her ugly, defective, worthless. But his daughter had grown into someone with more compassion and courage than those who had rejected her. "Then we'll meet them together," he promised, "as a family." Lyra's shell brightened with pink happiness as she settled back into her pool. "Can Marie come too?" Greg smiled. "I think she'd like that very much." The day of the Xelarian delegation's arrival came quickly. Greg, Lyra, and Marie traveled to the government facility where the meeting would take place. Lyra wore a special outfit Marie had made for her, a flowing garment that accommodated her 6 limbs while showing off the beautiful colors that rippled through her transparent shell. "Are you nervous?" Greg asked as they waited in a large conference room. Lyra's shell flickered between green hope and purple uncertainty. "A little. What if they still think I'm ugly?" Marie knelt beside her. "Then they'll be wrong, just like they were before. Your shell isn't a defect, Lyra. It's what makes you special." Dr. Alan Cortez joined them, carrying his tablet filled with 7 years of data on Lyra's development. "The delegation has arrived. There are 5 Xelarians, including one of their leading scientists." Greg took a deep breath. "Are you ready, Lyra?" Lyra straightened her 4 lower limbs and raised her upper ones in a posture of confidence. "I'm ready, Dad." The door opened and the Xelarians entered. Their jewel-like exoskeletons shimmered with blue and purple patterns as they moved. 4 of them were tall with elaborate head crests, marking them as officials. The 5th was smaller, with a simpler appearance. Director Kelly Weber from the Extraterrestrial Affairs Division made the introductions. "This is Lead Diplomat Zexar, Science Minister Velilan, Cultural Attaché Miri Axe, Security Chief Dorvan, and their xenobiologist, Dr. Tixara." The lead Xelarian stepped forward, his shell glowing with formal blue patterns. "We greet the human Gregory Powell and the Xelarian called Lyra." Greg nodded respectfully, but kept one hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We welcome you to Earth." The Xelarian's compound eyes focused on Lyra, their antennae twitching with what seemed like surprise. The smallest Xelarian, Dr. Tixara, moved closer. "Remarkable," she said, her voice translated through a device around her neck. "The transparency is complete, yet the color expressions are more varied than any I have documented." Lyra's shell rippled with yellow curiosity as she studied the visitors. "Why? Did you want to meet me?" The Xelarians exchanged glances, their shells shifting colors rapidly. Finally, lead diplomat Zexar spoke. 7 of your Earth years ago, transparent-shelled offspring were rare, 1 in 10,000 Earths. Now they appear in 1 of every 100 births, too many to follow the old protocols. Greg frowned. "You mean too many to kill?" The diplomat's colors darkened. "Our ways are not yours to judge, human. But yes, our practices have changed by necessity." The scientist, Dr. Tixara, stepped forward again. "We wish to understand why this is happening and how these offspring develop. Your Lyra is the oldest living transparent shell we know of." Lyra looked up at the scientist. "Are there others like me on Xelaria now?" "Yes, we have established a special learning center for transparent shells. There are currently 97 studying there." Greg noticed a shift in Lyra's colors, a deep orange of determination spreading through her shell. "Are they treated well?" Or are they still considered defective? The cultural attach, Miri X, answered, "Our society is adjusting. Change comes slowly to Zelaria. But we have discovered that transparent shells have unique abilities." Alan leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of abilities? Dr. Tixara's colors brightened with scientific excitement. They process information differently. They learn faster. And most interestingly, many show signs of telepathic capability. Telepathic, Greg repeated, surprised. The transparent shell seems to allow for direct emotional connection between individuals, Dr. Tixara explained. Something our ancestors may have possessed, but lost as our shells evolved to be more ornate and protective. Lyra's shell suddenly glowed with a brilliant white light that none of them had seen before. The Zelarians stepped back, their colors flashing with alarm. "She's doing it now," Dr. Tixara whispered, projecting emotions. Greg felt a strange sensation, a wave of feelings that weren't his own washing over him. Wonder, curiosity, joy, and a deep sense of belonging. He looked at Lyra, whose white glow illuminated the entire room. "I can feel what she's feeling," Marie said softly, tears in her eyes. The Zelarian officials conferred quickly among themselves, their shells shifting through rapid color patterns. Finally, lead diplomat Zexar addressed Greg directly. "Human. Gregory Powell, we have a request. We wish for Lyra to visit Zelaria, to meet others like herself, and to help us understand these emerging abilities." Greg felt a cold fear grip his heart. "You want to take her back? After you threw her away?" "Not take," the diplomat clarified. "Visit. You would accompany her, of course, and your mate as well." He gestured toward Marie, who blushed but didn't correct the assumption. Greg looked at Lyra, whose shell had returned to its normal transparency, with swirls of curious yellow. "What do you think, Lyra? It's your decision." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke clearly, her voice stronger than Greg had ever heard it. "I want to go. I want to meet the others like me, but not because I want to leave Earth." Her shell glowed pink as she looked at Greg and Marie. "This is my home. You are my family. But maybe I can help the others understand that being different isn't being defective." 7 months later, Greg stood in a large circular chamber on Zelaria, watching with pride as Lyra addressed a mixed audience of humans and Zelarians. At 15 in Earth years, but developing at her own unique pace, she had grown taller and more confident. Her transparent shell glowed with the orange of determination as she spoke. "7 years ago, I was considered worthless because I looked different," she said, her voice clear in both human language and Zelarian clicks. "Today, I stand before you as proof that worth isn't determined by appearance." In the audience, nearly 100 young Zelarians with transparent shells listened intently. Since their arrival 3 weeks ago, Lyra had worked with them daily, teaching them to control their colors and to use their emerging telepathic abilities. "My human father saw value in me when my own species saw none," Lyra continued. "He taught me that differences aren't flaws, they're gifts waiting to be understood." Greg felt Marie's hand slip into his. They had married in a small ceremony before leaving Earth, making official what had been growing between them for years. Marie had taken to the role of Lyra's second parent with natural ease. Beside them sat Dr. Tixara, who had become a strong advocate for the transparent-shelled Zelarians. "She is remarkable," the scientist whispered. "In just these few weeks, she has taught us more than we discovered in 7 years of study." As Lyra finished her speech, her shell began to glow with the brilliant white light of emotional projection. This time, the other transparent-shelled Zelarians joined her, their combined light filling the chamber. Greg felt the wave of emotions, hope, pride, belonging, and love wash over everyone present. The lead diplomat approached Greg as the meeting concluded. "We were wrong," he admitted, his shell showing colors of humility that Greg had never seen in his Ilarian before. "The one we called ugly has become a bridge between our worlds." Greg watched as Lyra was surrounded by young transparent shells, all eager to learn from her. "She was never ugly," he said. "You just didn't know how to see her beauty." Later that night, as they prepared for sleep in their guest quarters, Lyra approached Greg with a serious expression. "Dad," she said, her shell glowing with steady green hope, "I want to start a school, here on Zelaria, for the transparent shells." Greg looked at her in surprise. "You want to stay here?" "Not forever," Lyra clarified, "but for a while. They need someone who understands what it's like to be different. Someone who can teach them that they have value." Greg felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride in the person Lyra had become, sadness at the thought of separation, but understanding of her purpose. "If that's what you want to do, we'll support you," he said. "Marie and I can stay as long as you need us." Lyra's shell glowed pink with happiness. "I want to do for them what you did for me. You saved me, Dad, not just from being discarded, but from believing I was worthless." Greg pulled his alien daughter into a gentle embrace. 7 years ago, he had made an impulsive decision that changed both their lives forever. He had seen worth in a child others had rejected, and in doing so, had found healing for his own broken heart. "You saved me too, Lyra," he whispered. "You saved me too."